Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 102b, part 2, with the words Amar Rabbi Abba, etc. The Gemara rejects this explanation. Rabbi Abba said, no, the reason for the ruling of the Mishnah is that the intention of anyone who consecrates his property is not upon the clothing of his wife and his children. That is, he does not intend to consecrate those items. Rabbi Zera objects to Rabbi Abba's explanation and is the intention of a person who consecrates his property to do so upon his phylacteries, on his tefillin? Presumably not. And we learned in the Mishnah, in Erechim 23b, that with regard to one who consecrates all of his property, his tefillin, his phylacteries, are evaluated for him and consecrated. Apparently, lack of intent to consecrate a particular item does not prevent its consecration. Abaye says, Rabbi Zera, yes, the intention of a person who consecrates his property is upon his phylacteries, because one who consecrates his property thinks himself, I am performing a mitzvah, and he therefore intends to include his phylacteries. But the intention of a person is not upon the clothing of his wife and his children, due to the enmity that would be engendered if he consecrated their clothing. Rabbi Oshaya also objects to Rabbi Abba's explanation, but is it not so that the matter of those who are obligated in valuations was taught here in the Mishnah? And we learned in the Mishnah, our Erechim 21a, concerning those who are obligated in valuations, the temple treasury seizes collateral from them to force them to fulfill their vow. And is the intention of a person upon himself to allow the treasurer to seize collateral from him? Presumably not. Nevertheless, collateral is seized from him, proving that one's intention does not prevent consecration. Accordingly, even if it is assumed that he does not intend to consecrate the clothing of his wife or children, the clothing should nevertheless be consecrated. Why then is the clothing of his wife or children consecrated? Rather, Rabbi Abba also holds that the reason the clothing is not consecrated is not due to his intent. As he said a different explanation. Anyone who consecrates his property becomes as one who transferred his wife's and his children's clothing to them at the outset. Therefore, the clothing did not belong to him at the time he had consecrated his property. The Gemara presents another situation in which one makes a purchase involving a third party. Sages taught, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught, in the case of one who purchases a field in the name of another, he is not compelled to sell it. But if he said to him at the time of the sale, I will purchase the field on condition that he will sell it to me, he is compelled to sell it. Noting the ambiguity of this statement, the Gemara asks, what is it saying? Rav Sheshet said that this is what it is saying. With regard to one who purchases a field from another, claiming that he is acting in the name of the exilarch, or another dominant figure, so that others will be discouraged from contesting the sale. The exilarch is not compelled to sell it to him. That is, the exilarch is not required to provide the purchaser with documentation that the field belongs to the purchaser. But if the purchaser said to the seller, I will purchase the field on the condition that the exilarch will provide me with that documentation, the exilarch is compelled to sell it to him. In other words, to provide him with the documentation. The Gemara questions of Shesh's interpretation. The master said, with regard to one who purchases a field in the name of the exilarch is not compelled to sell it to him, since the Braita teaches that only the exilarch is not required to provide the purchaser with documentation that the field is his. It can be understood by inference that the purchaser has nevertheless acquired the field for himself. Let us say that this interpretation of the Braita disagrees with the statement of the residents of the West, which is Eretz Yisrael, who say, and who inform the owner of the wheat he should transfer the wheat to the customer. Since the seller assumed he was selling the field to the exilarch, let the sages of Eretz Yisrael would hold that sale does not take effect. The Gemara rejects this if it is due to this inference that it is surmised that the Braita is in accordance with the opinion of the sages of Eretz Yisrael. It is not difficult, as it can be said that the Braita is discussing a case where the purchaser informed the owner of the field and informed the witnesses that he intends to purchase the field for himself. The Gemara rejects Rav Shesh's interpretation for a different reason. Rather, say that the latter clause is difficult, as it states that if the purchaser said to the seller, I will purchase the field on the condition that the exilarch will sell it to me, the exilarch is compelled to sell it to him. Why should the exilarch be compelled to provide the purchaser with documentation? But let the exilarch say, I do not desire your esteem, nor do I require your disgrace. In other words, I'm not involved in your affairs. Since the exilarch had not been party to the negotiations, how can the stipulations stated by the purchaser render him obligated? Rather, Abaye said, this is what the Braita is saying. With regard to one who purchases a field in the name of his friend, the exilarch,